whispers crawl beneath the skin, a shadow's grin.
The Weaver's Prophecy. The rhythmic clack of the wooden loom was the heartbeat of Sister Agnes's world. It was a steady, familiar percussion that measured her days within the stone walls of St. Guthlac's Abbey. Her fingers, thin and pale as parchment, moved with a surety that belied her blindness. She felt the sturdy warp threads, vertical and taut, and with a gentle push of her foot on the treadle, she opened a space. Her hand selected a weft thread from the basket beside her, soft, spun wool the monks had dyed with madder root and woad. She passed the shuttle through the shed, pulled the beater forward with a firm, practiced hand, and the thread became part of the whole. Clack, clack, thump. She had been blind since a fever took her sight at 7 summers, but her memory held color like a treasured reliquary. Sister Agnes saw with her fingertips. The tapestry growing on the great loom was a vision not of light, but of texture and order. It was to be the glory of the new chapel, a monumental depiction of the life of St. Guthlac, the hermit of the fens. She had memorized the patterns from raised sketches the abbot himself had pressed into wax tablets for her. Here the saint's moment of conversion, a smooth expanse of fine wool. There his battle with demons in the marshes, the threads knotted and rough to suggest tumult. Her work was prayer. As she wove, she recited psalms, her lips moving in silent harmony with the loom's song. The brothers believed her hands were guided by divine inspiration, and in a way they were. For Sister Agnes in the darkness behind her eyes did not merely follow the wax patterns. She felt a pull, a gentle guidance, as if the story itself was settling into the weave, choosing its own form. It was a quiet companionship, this inspiration. It felt like grace. One morning the monastery awoke to a mystery. Brother Thomas, the youngest monk, had been tasked with bringing Sister Agnes her morning bowl of porridge and mead. As he entered the weaving room, a high-ceilinged chamber lit by long, narrow windows, he stopped short. The air was cold and the loom was silent, but the tapestry had grown, significantly. "Father Abbot," Thomas whispered, his voice echoing down the stone corridor, "you must come." Abbot Paul was a pragmatic man, his face etched with the lines of administration and worry. He followed the young brother, his footsteps heavy. He saw it immediately. The tapestry now extended a full hand's breadth beyond where it had been the previous evening. The new section was not part of the saint's life. It depicted the abbey's own bell tower, rendered in startling, minute detail. And there, a small figure in a monk's habit was plummeting from its heights, arms outstretched. The thread used was a strange, dark crimson, unlike any in the abbey's stores. It seemed to drink the weak morning light. "Did Sister Agnes work through the night?" the abbot asked, his voice low. "No, Father. She was in her cell at Compline, I am certain." The abbot leaned closer. The crimson thread had a dull sheen, and a faint metallic scent clung to it, cold earth and something else, something coppery. He crossed himself. "Do not speak of this. It is a prank, a poor one. Fetch Sister Agnes." When Sister Agnes was led to the loom, and her fingers traced the new, chilling scene, she recoiled. "This is not my work," she said, her voice trembling. "This thread, it is cold. It smells of the grave." "Did you have a dream, sister?" the abbot pressed, studying her clouded eyes for truth. I dreamt of the loom, but it was not this one. It was of bone, and it sang a different song." She shook her head, confused. "This is not from my hands, Father. I swear it." The abbey continued its day, hushed and uneasy. Brother said the cellarer was a stout, cheerful man in charge of the monastery's stores. That afternoon, he climbed the bell tower to check for a leak reported near the belfry. The rope for the bell, old and frayed, was coiled near the edge. As he stepped past it, his foot caught. A cry echoed across the courtyard, cut short by a terrible, final impact on the flagstones below. He had fallen from the exact spot depicted in the tapestry. The Abbey plunged into a frozen silence, broken only by the desperate ringing of the infirmary bell. Fear, sharp and sour, seeped into the stones. In the weaving room, Abbot Paul stood before the tapestry, now a thing of dread. The crimson figure of the falling monk seemed to mock him. He ordered a watch placed on Sister Agnes's door and on the loom itself. It did not matter. Each morning, a new section of the dark crimson weave appeared. The loom worked in the deep watches of the night, its clacking heard by those on guard, a slow, relentless sound that seemed to come from both within the room and from the very foundations. The guards would find the door locked from within, Sister Agnes fast in her cell, and the tapestry groan. The next panel showed Brother John, the librarian, clutching his throat, his face woven in a rictus of agony, strange black veins creeping up his neck. 3 days later, Brother John choked to death on a piece of bread during the silent meal, his face purpling, hands clawing at his neck as he collapsed onto the refectory table. The panel after that depicted Brother Martin, the candle maker, engulfed in a whirl of brilliant, terrible orange and yellow threads. He was found in his workshop, a spilled vat of hot wax and a Knocktober lantern creating an inferno that consumed him and half the outbuilding. Paralysis gripped Saint Gothic. Work ceased. Prayers were muttered in terror, not devotion. The monks looked at Sister Agnes with a mixture of awe and horror. Was she a prophet, her blindness allowing her to see the grim threads of fate, or was she a conduit for something malignant, weaving curses into reality with that bloody thread? The tapestry was no longer a holy project, it was a chronicle of doom. The beautiful, serene scenes of Saint Gothic's life were now framed by a creeping border of crimson horror. Abbot Paul confronted Sister Agnes in her cell. She sat on her narrow cot, her hands restless in her lap, weaving invisible patterns in the air. The voice, she murmured before he could speak, "It is clearer now. It does not speak in words, Father. It is a pressure, a need. It says the true history must be recorded. It shows me the bone loom in the dark under our feet. It is hungry for the pattern." What true history? The abbot demanded. Our history is one of faith, of light built upon this rock. Is it? Sister Agnes asked, her blind eyes turning toward him. What was here before the rock, before the light? The abbot, a man of scripture and order, felt a fissure open in his certainty. He consulted the abbey's oldest records, crumbling parchments in a forgotten script. There were hints, oblique references to the old pain, to the seal in the deep place. The abbey had been founded not just for piety, but as a bulwark, against what the records did not say. The final crimson panel began to appear. It did not show a single death. It showed the end of everything. The abbey was in flames. Monstrous, shadowy shapes with too many limbs swarmed the courtyards, pulling down monks, defacing the cross. In the center of the chaos, the tapestry itself was shown, unspooling from the loom like a venomous tongue, leading to a dark maw in the earth. Abbot Paul saw this abomination growing day by day, and his fear curdled into resolve. This was not prophecy. This was demonic suggestion, a self-fulfilling curse. The tapestry was planting the seeds of their destruction in their minds, perhaps even shaping events through some unclean magic. It had to be destroyed. He called a chapter meeting. His voice was steel. The work is diabolical. It predicts nothing. It poisons everything. We will burn it, today, in the courtyard where all can see its end." Sister Agnes, brought to the meeting, fell to her knees. "No, Father, please, I have felt it. The tapestry is not the source. It is a container. It is binding the story, holding the pattern in place. To burn it is to break the vessel." "The vessel holds a plague, sister," the abbot replied, though her words chilled him. "We will burn the plague away." That afternoon, under a gray and lifeless sky, the monks carried the enormous tapestry from the weaving room. It was heavy, impossibly so for its size. The beautiful sections of St. Gothic were now overshadowed by the sprawling, bloody narrative of their own demise. The air around it hummed with a low, subaudible frequency. They piled kindling in the central courtyard. With a prayer of exorcism, Abbot Paul took a torch from Brother Thomas and thrust it into the base of the pyre. Flames licked hungrily at the dry wood, then caught the edge of the tapestry. The wool and linen of the saintly scenes burned with a clean orange fire, but the crimson threads, they did not burn easily. They blackened and withered, letting out a high, keening sound, like the scream of a rabbit in a trap. A smell of burnt hair and spoiled meat filled the courtyard. As the last of the fabric curled into ash, the ground gave a deep, sickening shudder. A crack shot through the flagstones at the abbot's feet. From the heart of the pyre, from the brazier's heart, the unburned cores of the crimson threads began to move. They slithered, blackened and glistening like a nest of serpents, away from the heat. They moved with purpose, wriggling through the new crack in the stones, disappearing into the earth, heading down. A profound silence fell, broken only by the popping of the dying fire. The abbot stared at the crack, then at the horrified face of Sister Agnes. Her words echoed in his mind, a container binding the story. "Tools," he said, his voice hoarse, "and arms, we follow them down." The descent into the catacombs beneath the abbey was a journey into the belly of forgotten time. The passages, lined with the bones of long-dead brothers, grew colder and damper. The walls changed from dressed stone to rough, sweating rock. They followed the trail of a faint, bloody slick on the stone, a path left by the slithering threads. The air grew thick with the smell of damp earth and that same coppery, cold scent. The passage opened suddenly into a vast natural cavern. The monks' torches pushed back the darkness, revealing a sight that stopped their hearts. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like stone teeth, and corresponding stalagmites rose from the floor. But they were not random. They had been arranged, perhaps grown over centuries, into a hideous parody of a loom. The stalactites were the warp beam, the stalagmites the cloth beam. Between them, stretched taut, was a weaving. It was the true tapestry. It was woven not with wool, but with desiccated sinew, with strips of leathery skin, with thin, polished bones as weft. The pattern was not of saints, but of obscene pagan rites. It showed figures in antlered masks dancing around standing stones, performing acts of brutal sacrifice under a different sky. It was a history of the death cult that had once worshipped in this cavern, a cult devoted to entities that fed on pain and endings. The final, unfinished section of this grisly loom showed the coming of the monks, the building of the abbey as a seal over the cavern, a seal that was a suppression, a denial of this true history. The bloody threads from Sister Agnes's tapestry had returned home. They were now weaving themselves into this older, darker work, completing the story not with the abbey's triumph, but with its ruin, as a final, delicious sacrifice to break the seal. Sister Agnes, guided to the cavern, let out a soft whimper. "The bone loom," she said. "This is what I dreamed. My loom above it was an echo. This was the source. My inspiration was its hunger, trying to finish its tale." Abbot Paul understood. The abbey had not been built to commemorate, but to imprison. Sister Agnes's gift, her connection to the divine through pattern, had been hijacked. The entity in the deep place used her to weave its own story back into the world, using the deaths of the monks as threads, aiming to weave the final panel of its own liberation. "Tear it down," the abbot commanded, his voice echoing in the cavern. "Every strand. Then bring the holy relics, the consecrated wine, the salt. We will seal this place anew." The monks worked with frantic haste, their fear giving way to a furious devotion. They tore the sinew and bone from the stone teeth, piling the foul weaving in a heap. They anointed the cavern walls with oil and wine. They packed the narrow entrance with blessed salt and stones, and they sealed it with a stone slab into which a cross was carved, pressing the abbey's most sacred relic, a splinter from the true cross, into its center. Back in the sunlight, the abbey was quiet. The curse seemed broken. No more crimson thread appeared. The deaths ceased. Sister Agnes's hands lay still in her lap. The divine inspiration, the gentle guidance was gone. It had been severed at its polluted root. She was merely a blind nun again. The abbot ordered a new, simple tapestry for the chapel, woven by another. The community, scarred and halved, began the long work of healing. Weeks later, in the quiet of the weaving room now used for storage, Sister Agnes sat at a small, simple frame loom. She was attempting a basic pattern, a simple tablecloth, but her fingers, once so sure, were clumsy. Frustrated, she let her hand rest on the plain linen cloth. Her fingertips, sensitive as always, traced the weave. Under them, she felt not the simple crosshatch of the linen, but a pattern, a familiar, dreadful pattern. It was the complex, swirling, agonized design from the center of the crimson tapestry, the design that had surrounded the demonic horde. She snatched her hand away, her breath catching. Down in the deepest dark, behind the new seal in the cavern of the bone loom, the silence was absolute. But in the stone slab sealing the entrance, a network of hairline cracks, thin as threads, had begun to spread. They spread in a pattern, a precise and deliberate replication of the very first crimson panel Sister Agnes had ever woven, the figure of a monk falling endlessly through the dark. And in Sister Agnes's empty, sightless world, a faint, familiar pressure began to whisper once more at the edges of her mind, as soft as the brush of a spider's leg, and as cold as a thread drawn from the earth.